Awesome. Well, hey, folks, excited to introduce you today to another sponsor for Elevate SKO. I'm joined by my friend Dylan Scroggins with the Kalmar Group. And Dylan, I'm really pumped that you're going to be joining us at Elevate Sales Kickoff. But for those who don't know who you are, I'd love it if you'd share a little bit about who you are, what your background is, and what you're doing over at Kalmar Group.
Yeah, man. No, appreciate it. Glad to have met you in the last few months. Excited about what you're building. So, Kalmar Group is a recruitment partner for property management companies. We do a lot of work outside of property management, but about 70% of our business is in the wild world of property management. So we saw a gap in the market. A lot of times people think of recruiting as like Fortune 500 companies or like staffing, but there wasn't a lot of people thinking about that like director level type leadership role and then also actively recruiting for BDM. So we've had a lot of fun in this space, not just posting jobs, but really recruiting and going after top talent to bring them into this fun world of property management.
Well, I love it, man. And this is obviously the topic of BDMs is a pretty hot topic in the world of property management. It has been for a while, right? I think a lot of business owners they start the business, they're the salesperson by default, and at some point comes this time to bring in a salesperson who's really focused on that. I'm curious from your perspective. I mean, we could probably talk about this for hours, but in your opinion, what makes a great salesperson in the property management industry?
Yeah, great question. So I think the perspective is everything from building the job description to going after them and finding them to also setting them up for success. I think we all are looking for people that have like a high agency, like they're capable of a lot of bandwidth and the autonomy, because typically this is a remote role for the most part. They have a hunger to close deals, make money, but also help build a company. And lastly, there's got to be some coachability, right?
Mm.
Because 90% of the BDMs that we place do not have property management experience. They're coming in from software. They're coming in from another kind of high volume sales type role.
Mm.
So having the patience to teach them property management, the lingo, the semantics, etc., but also being open to saying, hey, look, there might be something that you learn from the SMB software team that we can apply here that we weren't thinking about. So I think there's a mutual respect, assuming you're bringing in a high performer where yes, you can teach them a lot about property management, real estate, investment properties, all those things, but also they can bring a lot of value from whatever their background is. So and even a more granular response, I think closing experience is everything. Someone who's had the confidence and the moxie to ask for people's business, you can build a relationship all you want, but if you don't ask for that signature, you're not technically in sales. Like anybody can hook a fish,
Yeah.
not everybody can bring it in the boat. And I think that's what we look for in regards to the background of people we reach out to is closing experience and a desire to really be great at the sales profession. We're not looking for people who want to try out sales, but there's a certain DNA of salespeople that we're looking for.
Yeah, I think that's really good, man. And one of the things that jumped out at me is, you mentioned folks that are coming from actually outside the property management industry, and I feel like a lot of people that I've worked with and I've talked to, they kind of default to like, oh, I really want somebody with a real estate background, right? Maybe it's somebody who was a broker before, they were a BDM somewhere else, but it sounds like you're saying what you're seeing a lot is, folks actually wanting to come into this industry without that experience.
Look, nobody's in kindergarten wanting to be in property management. I have a son who's 5 years old. He wants to be an astronaut or a fireman. He doesn't want to be in property management. A lot of times, the narrative is changing, but people think of property management as fixing toilets and, a roof catching fire or something
Mm.
like that. They don't think of property management as a long-standing career with actually quality opportunities, and they definitely don't think of it as like a destination for a salesperson. So I think crafting a story, especially in property management, where hey, this is a great opportunity for you to advance your sales career, whether you want to be in property management or real estate long term or not. So, getting back to just kind of like the core of the question, I think it's all about casting a vision for property management
Mm.
and that it's not your daddy's property management anymore. I think a narrative's shifting where it's looking to be more like investment management, right?
Mm.
You have an investment property, but so many times we only talk about the property part, not the investment part. So, once again, there's two ways to say the same thing. You can say one, hey, field inbound from property owners about managing their property. Okay, that's one way. The same exact thing. You can say, hey, field calls from investors looking for a vehicle for their money.
And
Same thing, different ways to say it. And I think what we're trying to do alongside with our clients, we actually just signed an agreement today to start a new BDM search out of Indianapolis, is really reframing the narrative, starting with the owner and then go into the outbound market, really finding talent that otherwise would not have considered property management and seen it as a career where they can make money, close deals, and then lead to their next part of their career.
okay, you touched on this a couple times in this conversation, and you and I have talked about this at length. I think it's worth noting for people when we say recruiting, what we're really talking about, because one of the things that you've said to me over and over again is a lot of times the best talent is not out there looking, right? The best talent is actually doing really well where they are, right? And those are the people that you want to attract and bring in. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that and just kind of your mindset around recruiting versus, just kind of fielding inquiries from people that are job hunting.
Yeah, so man, you struck a nerve there. So I look at recruiting in three, I guess summary here of how I look at recruiting.
Okay.
Recruiting is a sales function. We have it on our website. The people you want are typically not looking, especially in sales.
Mm,
It's hard to hook a good salesperson to get them on a call because what are they doing? They're too busy closing
yeah.
deals. But you want to get the message out there because you never know who just missed out on President's Club because of $50,
Mm,
who just got a new sales manager who's now micromanaging them. You never know where they're at. So in some ways, it's easy to sell a salesperson, but also like it's hard to find those salespeople who are highly talented, but also like open to new opportunities and have their head up a little bit. We joke around, entering the transfer portal to use a
yeah.
college football. So, one, recruiting is a sales function. Recruiting is not a marketing function where you just post a job. That's more in the hiring bucket. I would argue good hiring starts with good recruiting. A
Mm,
lot of people have great hiring and interview practices and reference checks and all this stuff. Who cares? If you do not have good top of funnel recruiting, you will not have good hiring. I mean, property management, right? Everybody wants great, understandable, rich owners that are low maintenance. You don't just like find those, right? Like
yeah.
you have to kind of go get those in a certain way,
Yeah.
right? So to use the property management language, if you're upset with the investors or owners you have, go find some new ones.
Mm,
Don't just settle for the ones that are coming in. So one, recruiting is a sales function. You have to go out and sell the opportunity. One, recruiting is a core business foundation. Everybody thinks of like sales, marketing, operations, finance. You think of like EOS and like high operational type stuff, especially in property management. But we're trying to chisel some rock for recruiting on the Mount Rushmore of business,
mm,
right? And I think also, lastly, like sales is a skill. There's some owners and founders and presidents that are really good at it and like it and get energy from it. Most people don't, right? So, and also too, even those they kind of tap out of their friend market because we see a lot of our clients before they call us, they post a job and are just displeased. They ping their friends, that can only last so long, or they just procrastinate and they just don't do it. So that's where the opportunity cost comes in. Is like, what's the loss in not making this hire? Then also, what's the loss in making a bad hire?
mm.
We're in the people business. We can't guarantee we're going to be A plus in both of those, but we like to think that we greatly increase your chances because this is all we do every day. So we love recruiting BDMs. Just a little bit of my background. For the last 8 years, I was in software sales. Before that, I was in recruiting. Before that, I was in college admissions. But during my time in software sales, we hired this role different, but same kind of candidate profile of a BDM. I mean, nonstop for 5 years.
Yeah.
So I think the key thing is finding people, like we said earlier, who are hungry, who want to win and competitive. They want to make a lot of money, and there's nothing wrong with that. And three, they're really coachable and are a sponge to learn.
Well, I think you brought up a really interesting point there too, Dylan, of like, a lot of founders and company owners in this industry, they might be great operators, but they might not have a whole lot of sales experience. And so if you don't have a sales background, you haven't been in that seat, you haven't hired salespeople before, it can be pretty intimidating to think about going out and trying to hire somebody to fill that role. You know what I mean? And so having somebody like you who can come alongside them and really say, no, like these are the things we need to be looking for. These are the types of people we need to look for. It's a huge asset for your clients.
And also where to look for them. We're
Mm,
seeing a lot of people who are burned out in the software world. They thought they wanted a career being a BDR or AE in some sort of B2B SaaS platform, but they kind of get tired of selling a widget. I mean,
mm,
I was spoiled. I worked for like a mission critical software and sales was awesome. But there's a lot of like bogus AI tools or marketing tools or just kind of like junk software that's actually not that great. They just raised a big round,
yep.
hired a bunch of salespeople, and then put a bunch of quotas on them. There's a lot of people attracted to getting into property management. It's a real service, it's a tangible offering. They just didn't know there were actually a bright career and a lucrative career in it. And one last thing on that, too, I think the biggest challenge is typically with the owners before they get a BDM, they're doing it, right? So that's a hard thing to let go of and give
Mm,
to someone who might be new to property management. It goes owner to BDM. There's no like delusion process, right?
right.
I think that's another challenge for these founders, owners, especially when they get to that 250 to 500 door mark where they have to have a BDM. Uh, that's a hard thing to let go of, but you
Yeah.
have to if you want to scale more.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, our mutual friend Kristen Lopez is fond of saying, nobody's going to sell your company or work prospects care as much as you as the business owner, and so there is a little bit of a release of control there that you've got to be willing to do, and all the more willing to do when you have a capable person who's ready to go out and hit the ground hard. So,
And who might be better than you.
and might be better than you. I think.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's a hard pill to swallow, but it's
Yep.
true. They might be better than you, and that's all they're gonna do. They're gonna be maniacally focused on closing inbound, creating outbound, and finding any way to bite, scratch, and claw. If you're not grimacing, writing commission checks to your BDM 6, 8 months, a year down the road, then you hired the wrong BDM. You need to appropriately not like them because the commission checks are so big, but at the same time, you're gonna love them because the return's always worth it.
Man, well that right there is a great mic drop, but we're not going to stop it there. I love that. That is an excellent point. Dylan, my last question for you, man. Obviously, you what you do is intimately tied into the world of sales in property management. I'm curious, what excites you about Elevate Sales Kickoff? What made you want to jump on board and be a sponsor of this event?
Yeah, it was an easy decision. Love that y'all are in SEC country here in Nashville, but also love what you're doing for this industry. And I feel like, after working and recruiting in property management the last couple of years, it seems that sometimes a BDM role is overlooked. It's typically someone earlier in their career.
Mm,
It's typically someone who's new to property management, and there's not a lot of training and oversight, which is ironic because at the same time, one of the biggest struggles for property management owners, especially now with Google reviews dropping and things like that, is inbound leads.
mm.
So it makes sense in the service that you're providing in training, inspiring, and creating community. Because once again, most people don't have a team of BDMs. They have one, maybe two. So the fact that you're offering community to the BDMs, you're investing in them, but also changing the mindset and the narrative around this absolute critical function of PM groups. Yeah, man, I think it's a no-brainer. I don't know the PM business, but I know what it's like building sales team, and what you're doing and the way you're doing it at scale is super impressive.
Awesome, man. Well, Dylan, I know that the folks that are at Elevate are going to take so much away from conversations with you and the expertise, just knowledge you have from hiring this role many times, and you know, at the bare minimum, being a very, very successful salesperson yourself over the course of your career. So excited to have you, man, and we'll look forward to seeing everybody in Nashville.
Awesome. I'm excited, man. See you in Nashville.